When your pizza rolls are done.
There's nothing left for us here. 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 There's nothing left for us here.
Horror is a difficult thing to pull off in just about any medium, be it movies, TV shows, books, comics, YouTube ARGs, theme park rides, Happy Meal toys, Reddit threads, and video games. Effective horror relies on two things: immersion and suspension of disbelief. For horror to have any effective impact on the audience, you gotta somehow trick them into thinking that they're actually in danger. This is already a very difficult thing to do. Fortunately, video games are a medium more immersive than, say, movies or TV shows. So horror games are some of the best ways to have a nice, spooky experience, right? Well, there's one thing that horror games haven't been able to pull off effectively yet, that being co-op. Co-op in horror games is a surefire way to kill the atmosphere. It's difficult to be completely immersed when you gotta look at a split screen, dealing with latency issues, or if you're like me and my friends, acting like complete morons the entire time. So for that reason, I always kind of avoided co-op in horror games. They can be fun, but they generally aren't a good horror experience. That was until I happened upon an obscure little PS2 game called Obscure, released in 2004 by Hydrovision Entertainment. I was initially intrigued by the premise of a co-op horror game released for the PS2. Couch co-op has been taken out to the pasture and shot unceremoniously in the back of the head in recent years. Thanks to remote play though, I could hopefully relive the days of wasting my time, being a kid and having fun, instead of buying properties in the aftermath of the housing market crash. So did I have fun playing Obscure? Yes. Is it a good game? No, not at all. Obscure kinda sucks. Well, it doesn't kinda suck, the game is just bad through and through. There's so many things that Obscure does that made me want to smash the Steam refund button. At times, it felt like my $7 would have been better spent on crack. This game's only saving grace is the fact that there's remote play co-op. In the case of most other horror games, co-op can completely kill the vibe of the game. This isn't the case with Obscure though. I thankfully had a buddy to play through the entire campaign with, and if I hadn't, I probably would have been this video a week ago.
Swish!
So what compelled me to make a video on this game anyway? Honestly, despite all of its flaws, I had a hell of a time playing it. This game sits perfectly in the so bad it's good zone. That and videos about games like this usually do pretty well, so, you know. It'd be nice if I could just let the game's intro play out in full, but I have no idea if the song they use would give the channel a copyright strike or not, so just take my word for it, it's the most 2000s pop punk song ever. This type of music is very not good, but I love it regardless. It's just pure nostalgia for me. In this insanely over-edited intro sequence, we get introduced to our main cast. We got everybody's favorite middle-class high schoolers: Josh, Stanley, Kenny, Shannon, and Ashley, who's not in the opening cutscene for some reason. I don't know how else to describe it, but early 2000s horror has the same vibe as like this video. Am I insane or does anybody else know what the hell I'm talking about? I like how they got the character that is insufferable and is recording everything on a camcorder. After all the kids head home, Kenny decides to stay behind for a while because ball is life. We are then treated to one of the most jarring tonal shifts I've ever seen in a video game. This feels like a melatonin dream. Here we get to experience the gameplay and the clunky ass movement. I won't hold against the game too much, fixed camera angles and weird movement systems were kind of the standard for the time. What I will hold against the game is how fugly it looks. I know this is a PS2 game, but there are some games in the same generation that look way better than this. This works in Obscure's favor though, as the horrible graphics help amplify the dingy, rundown look of the school. I think one of the scariest things in this game so far has to be the characters' faces. They look like if you peeled the person's face off and then stretched it over a mannequin. Kenny heads into the locker room to pick up his Motorola Razr, when a mysterious shadowy figure steals his gym bag. Kenny then follows the thief into this terrifying basement area. All of my fears are immediately dashed as soon as he finds a gun though. Now I know it's a part of a normal American high school. Here we can see the game's crafting system come into play. You can just tape different flashlights onto different guns. It doesn't go any further than that. What's funny about the flashlight is that you need to use it to clear away these clouds of darkness that can damage the player. If you've played Alan Wake, this will probably feel familiar. The funny thing is that Obscure came out a number of years before Alan Wake, so it's possible somebody at Remedy just yoinked this mechanic after playing Obscure. Looks like they need a remedy for their unoriginality. Kenny decides to investigate the noises that would make any sane person run away in fear, where he finds this Nosferatu looking dude. This is where the second player can join in. The co-op works pretty well, surprisingly. In single player, you can press triangle to control your AI teammate. In co-op, you can use this to change which player the camera is focused on. It's honestly a pretty neat feature that will come in handy later. Don't get too attached to either of these two. 3 seconds after making it out of the room they were in, they get dumpstered by an incomprehensible horror.
Breathe, bro, breathe.
Then bam, title screen. I was intrigued, to be honest. I mean, the story and the gameplay wasn't anything to write home about, but the idea of just playing the video game equivalent of a schlocky 2000s horror movie was appealing to me. I'm sure the game can only get better from here on out, right? So, remember when I said that the co-op works surprisingly well? I might have been stretching the truth a little, or a lot. The co-op legit just breaks down after the first section of the game. The game would drop to frames in the single digits.
Dude, I am literally getting 9 FPS.
This made doing things like picking up items or even navigating the map pretty much impossible. Combat? You're asking for way too much, man. Just enjoy the slideshow of the characters getting assaulted by monsters. The atrocious framerate issue was remedied by lowering the game's resolution to the lowest possible setting. What would have been a solution just led to another issue now, that being the fact that OBS was now recording the game like this. I'll just stretch it out and do some editing magic. Nothing a little Premiere can't fix. We also got soft locked because the key we needed to progress in the game just poofed out of our inventories. At this point, I had nearly run out of patience. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong with Obscure, and it was feeling like all of my efforts were in vain. But Mama didn't raise a quitter, she raised a content creator, which is arguably a lot fucking worse. After a relaxing afternoon of slamming my skull into various walls, we decided to start a new game at the lowest resolution and just hope for the best. And surprisingly, everything ran pretty smoothly. I wanted to mention our technical issues first, so that if any of you crazy characters decide to play this game, you can learn from my insurmountable battles. Part of the reason I even decided to continue playing this godforsaken piece of work was because of how much it was making me laugh. Before everything went to shit, that is. There's a certain kind of entertainment you get from messing around in co-op games, and the janky nature of the gameplay made it all the better. If you can resist bashing your teammate's skull in for 5 seconds, there is still some fun to be had. Thankfully, your character will auto-lock onto enemies, so you don't have to fight the camera that much during action sequences. As you move through the game, you find standard survival horror items. Med kits, guns and ammo, flashlight upgrades, that sort of thing. Melee weapons are also something you'll be able to pick up, but those are only good for general tomfoolery. You'll also find CDs in the various areas of the school as well. CDs allow the player to save the game manually at any time they want. The catch is, there's a limited number of CDs to be found, and depending on what difficulty you're playing on, there could be an extremely limited number of times you could save. Save too many times and now you're stuck on a combat encounter? Skill issue? On top of this, if a character dies, they die for real. Forever. Dunzo. There is no revival system in place, meaning you gotta do everything you can to make sure your characters don't get shit on too hard. What happens if all the characters die? You just get booted back to the home screen. Modern games have made me forget just how brutal older games can be. This death mechanic was never mentioned previously either. I just had to find out the hard way. This can be even more devastating when you consider the fact that each character has specific skills and abilities that could be really helpful throughout the game. Stanley is really good at picking locks, Josh can tell you if there's still items left in the room, and Shannon can be completely useless. Every character brings something to the table, so even though the combat isn't all that exciting on the surface, the threat of permanently losing a character and or having to load a save from hours ago makes the game feel so much more high stakes. Obscure's story is pretty non-existent. That doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it, though like I said before, this is pretty much a playable shitty horror movie with co-op, and that's always kind of been my bag. The characters are such tropes and archetypes from every horror movie that's existed.
Yes, take advantage of the sunshine while it lasts.
Completely normal thing for a person to say. None of them take the dire situation they're in seriously and act with the decision-making skills of a 4-year-old. I couldn't tell if this was just an audio thing or if the game shipped like this, but the dialogue and the cutscenes are edited together so bizarrely. Half the time it felt like the audio was delayed by a couple of seconds. Other times, characters would be borderline talking over each other.
Ms. Wixon, have you seen my brother, Kenny? Do you know where he is?
Kenny. Oh, another one.
What do you mean another one?
Herbert?
Herbert?
never
He's
let
the
them out
maniac who
before.
kidnapped Kenny?
It's Leonard.
Leonard, that name
He
rings a
wants to get
bell.
out. There's
She's
no
totally
way to stop him.
traumatized.
It's unintentionally hilarious. After Kenny goes missing in the beginning of the gang decides to stay after school to look for him. Going to the police and filing a report is way too much of a normie thing to do anyway. After school, all the evil shit that was happening in the school's basement is now bubbling up to the surface. Don't worry though. There's the requisite amount of lethal weapons scattered around the school to survive the situation. You fight your way through the school, slowly unraveling the mystery through video game exposition notes and voice recordings. The best way to tell a story known to man.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my.
We learned that the totally not evil principal from the beginning is well over 100 years old somehow. He also had a twin brother that died in a plane crash. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I kind of forget everything else about this game's extensive lore, so don't yell at me too hard if I mess some stuff up, please. Somehow, the principal came across these rare plant spore things, and experiments with these spores show that they can greatly increase a person's lifespan. So he sets up the school as a way to kidnap students and use them to further his research. That would explain why students have been going missing at the school for like the past 100 years, but nobody really seems to care. The only hitch is that like 90% of these experiments end with the students turning into these horrible mutants. By coming into contact with these mutated students, the playable characters have been infected with the plant spores, and they only got till sunrise before they turn into monsters themselves. So they venture into the secret lab underneath the school to find the cure, only to find the principal's brother is still alive. He's just uber fucked up, and now you gotta bust a cap at him. What's cool about the final boss is that the second stage takes place above ground in the sunlight, even though it's been established that the monsters are weak to sunlight, and he disintegrates in like 2 seconds. You get Gigavax with the antidote, and that's the game. If Obscure were in the hands of another developer, we might have gotten a halfway decent horror game. The premise of the game could lend itself to something pretty interesting if given another chance. We didn't get that though. In my opinion, what we got was way better. Yeah, it's clunky and ugly and broken and the story sucks and the game just refused to work at one point, but goddamn did I have fun. Obscure is truly a testament to the fact that no matter what, co-op will make anything fun. If you're the type of person that enjoys watching cheesy horror movies with your friends, then Obscure is a game you gotta try. Let me know if I should try out the second one, or if my time would be better spent eating glass. Thanks for watching.
Your eyes on the Turk's latest and greatest, Elena.
How are women allowed to drive?